Alright, so thank you guys for coming this afternoon, and today we're going to talk about reading enrichment. I always ask myself, what do I do with the kids that don't need intervention? And how can they be challenged? Because a lot of times we have so many kids, especially being a school that is not doing well in reading, we have so many interventions. My kids are being pulled all the time for a million interventions, and then I have a select few of kids that don't go anywhere, and they're just sitting there like, what are we going to do? And it's like, I don't want to move on to something else because everyone else is going to miss it. So it's like, what do I do with those kids? Looking at our data, for fourth grade, we received a 57% in reading. And looking at my class and how they scored last year on their SOLs, a lot of them are like right at like 400, 416. So they like barely like made it. Or I have kids that are like, they received like a 380, 390. And it's like, how can we get those kids a little bit more? What can we do to get them where they need to be? A lot of the SOL is critical thinking. Some of the things that we do in class, it is critical thinking, but can we push them to get them over the hump? There's a lot of kids that receive either basic or they just pass. How can we get them to pass proficient or even, well, that is 600s and do better? So what is reading enrichment? A lot of times people think, oh, I'll just give them more work. Oh, I'll have Johnny do more, a little bit extra. No, that's not enrichment. That's just giving him more stuff to do. So what are some things that we can do in our class that's actually going to enrich them? Reading enrichment is more meaningful, sustainable, and rewarding. The enrichment activity can be an activity that promotes critical thinking, listening, memorization, visualization, and concentration. It's not just more work. Because Johnny's going to hate being the kid that knows what to do, and he's going to start going backwards and say, I don't want to do this. I don't want to read. I don't want to, because that's what my son does. He doesn't want to read. He doesn't want to do this because it's just, he understands, so he's just going to have more work to do. One thing that I did some research on, some activities and things that we can do in our class, and a lot of these activities are things that you can turn around and do tomorrow. A lot of times we go to professional development and it's something like, oh yeah, that's such a great idea. I'm going to try to remember to do that next year. And then next year comes and you're like, I don't remember what it was and what should I do? So a lot of these things are things that we can turn around and do in our classes right away. Literature circles they empower students. Vocabulary development, rich theme readings, student-selected topics, mixed ability groups. You rotate, going to different roles in the group. Also, it can be a type of informal assessment. You can take what the group is doing, their work that they have, because there is papers or information that they're going to fill out, and you can use it as an assessment. You can use it to say, like, okay, this person really doesn't understand vocabulary. Okay, this person really has a really hard time summarizing or finding those key details. And it also teaches the kids leadership because you're giving them the power. You're giving them the chance to say, like, okay, in a group, this is what I do, this is my job, this is my responsibility, and I'm taking ownership for what I'm doing in the group. Some of the things that you hear with literature circles, discussion. There's a lot of discussion in literature circles. The kids are talking to other kids about what they're reading. There's different roles that they have. They get to share. A lot of these have to do, a lot of times we ask kids like, okay, I want you to read and I want you to talk with your partner. Then they get off subject and you're like, well, are you guys talking about reading? And they're like, well, no, you're not. So this gives them a purpose. They have a purpose when they start reading. Okay, we're going to read this. Okay, we're going to discuss, this is my job, this is what I'm going to give in the group. Literature circles are structured reading activities that allow ordered thinking, and they're able to reflect and discuss. So in your packet, I gave you some papers that I use in my classroom that basically I keep them in a folder. So the kids have a bucket. I'll pull them for group, and then on their menu of things that they have to do, they'll come and get their basket, and in their basket they have their folder, and then they have their set of books. And in their folder, each person, when they do it, they pick a card that has a job. So I tell them, every day you need to have a different job, because otherwise the same person's doing the same easy job, and everyone wants to be the illustrator, because all I have to do is draw a picture. And so that way everyone gets a chance to work on visualizing, work on summarizing, work on vocabulary. And so there's two different ones in your packet that you could, use. And the kids, basically, they have a job, and that's what their focus is. They discuss together and say, like, okay, we're going to read to this page. And I give them the power. I say, this is your time with your group. Use it wisely. And they read. I said you can buddy read, you can read on your own, and then when you come back together, you're going to discuss what you guys read. Some of my kids, I asked them how they felt about literature circles, and some of my kids said, I like literature circles because you get to share your information with your group about the book. I like it because it helps you read more and summarize. I don't like it because people pout when they get about what they got. Sometimes no one wants to be the summarizer because you always have to write a ton of information. Another kid said, it makes me a better reader so I can concentrate on what I'm reading when other people read out loud or with a teacher. I think literature circles are good because we're learning to summarize and visualize. I dislike that our group tries to get the easy cards, and I think teachers should use literature circles because students can learn how to summarize. So the kids like it. I'm not hovering over them, and they're able to take ownership for what they're doing. Another thing that I found was different or creative book reports. I know in 4th grade, we have to do, we don't have to do, we encourage the kids to do book reports, a nonfiction book report and a fiction book report, so that they can earn points to be in the 5-point, 10-point club. And the kids do like it, but we also want to try to give them other ways to be creative. School is not just in this box, okay, fiction, nonfiction, write this information. Let them have an opportunity to be creative. One of the things that's in your packet is the pizza slice. It's a book report, but each part of the each slice has something different that they have to discuss. Character, setting, the problem, solution, the summary, about the author, and each one is a pizza slice in there. Let me go back to this slide. The cereal boxes, that's also in here. And this is just something I found online. You can tweak it and change it for what you want your kids to do. Taking a cereal box and just having them say, okay, you have to create a cereal for your book. This one was Goosebumps Rice Creatures Toasted Monsters. And it has to do with, he's obviously reading a book about Goosebumps, or a Goosebumps book. And then his information has to do with whatever. It can be focusing on characterization, it can focus on summarizing, whatever you want it to be, but it allows the kids to be creative and think outside of the box. I'm always having to tell my kids, think outside of the box. Don't think about what's just right here. Think beyond that. Another thing is, we always tell them, summarize, summarize, summarize. This is a matchbook summary, summarizing mat. And basically, all it is index cards, folded in half. And then chapter 1, this is what it was about. Chapter 2, all the way, obviously this is a long chapter, book is 20 chapters. But just something different that kids could do. If you go in your packet, there is a menu at the very end. And this is something that I haven't tried in my classroom, but I'm really looking forward to doing this. And this is called a book tasting. And basically what it is your kids are reading books. Have them choose the books. When you go to a restaurant, you look at a menu, and the menu has descriptions of what they serve. And basically kids are taking a book and they're letting you sample it. So let's say in my class we're reading Wonder. So on my menu, I'm going to have all this information about Wonder. So in this classroom, they set it up like it was an actual restaurant. They had the book out, and on the menu you could read about what Wonder is about to see, like, hey, is that a book that I want to read? Or you want to get your kids to try to like step out of what they normally read. I have a little girl in my class that likes to read like mythical Percy Jackson type books. And it's like, why don't you try to read something a little bit different, because you might like it. You never know. So they get a chance to taste different books to see like, okay, well maybe this is something I want to read. And then it allows the kids to try something new. You want to always just try to like get them to want to read. Just trying to find different ways. Another thing is an author study. If you, for the lower grades, my kids like to read, my own children like to read Fly Guy. And if you look at Fly Guy, and if you read the first sentence from that book, what does the first sentence say?
A boy had a pet fly named Fly Guy. Fly Guy could say the boy's name. Buzz.
What does your first page say?
The boy had a pet fly named Fly Guy. Fly Guy could say the boy's name. Buzz.
A boy had a pet fly named Fly Guy. Fly Guy could say the boy's name. Buzz.
Any book, any Fly Guy book that I read and I pick up, it is going to start with the same sentence. And you want kids to be able to pick that out and say, like, I know if I read a book, Fly Guy book by Ted Arnold, I'm gonna see this same thing. And then if you look at the very end of the book, it's the same thing. When Buzz got home, he made his very own asteroid belt. We learned a lot about space today. I can't wait for our next field trip. The next one, I can't wait for our next field trip about dinosaurs. I can't wait for the next one. So you, as kids are looking and they're looking at authors, how are they writing? How do authors write? If you pick up, my kids in the beginning of the year, we read the BFG. He has a ton of books. I never knew he wrote Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And he wrote Matilda. So, and The Magic Finger, which was $1 at Scholastic. All of these books have to do with magic. There's always a compassionate character in there. There's always, you're trying to get someone to feel good. No matter what story. This one's about a little girl whose parents were mean, but she had a nice teacher, and she wanted to live with her nice teacher. Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, you have a little boy who was kind, while everyone else was kind of snotty. The BFG, you have this kind, friendly giant, and all the other mean giants are, you know, telling him he should be a certain kind of way, but he wasn't. And The Magic Finger, I forgot what this one was called, but
James and the Giant Peach.
James and the Giant Peach, all of them have to do with a certain thing. So if kids are looking at authors, how does he write? One of the things that we talk about as the SOL is author's purpose. Why does the author use certain words in the writing? What does it mean? What's the purpose that he's doing this for? If we pulled authors, an author study, we can look at how authors are writing books. And kids pick it up. We were reading a book called Those Shoes, and I forgot who the author was. And then one of my kids said, Miss Gunter, did you know that my daughter started reading Pinky Princess Pinky, and it's like different fairy tales. He is the author to that book, but he illustrated Those Shoes. So kids pick up on it and they read. Like you think, like, oh, they don't pay attention to the author. They do. They really do, and they start to like make connections with it. So there's also an author's study paper in there, and there's lots on Pinterest. Lots. Another thing was, in my son's class, when he was in first